looking ahead, and our focus entirely on the show this morning is on World Humanitarian Day, which takes place tomorrow. And this morning, we are now joined by the CEO at Penny Appeal South Africa, Shahnaaz Paruk. Shahnaaz, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jummah Mubarak to you.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Jummah Mubarak to you and to all the listeners and whoever's tuning in.
Well, Shiraz, it's just appropriate that you join us on a day like this where we are focusing tomorrow, World Humanitarian Day. And we know that the theme this year is recognizing people like yourselves, recognizing people like Penny Appeal South Africa and the work that you do. And really, and I think it actually fits in quite well with Salam Media as well, being a humanitarian media organization. So we're talking humanitarianism all the way ahead of this day. What does this day actually mean, Shahnaaz, for people like yourself in the organization?
World Humanitarian Day definitely marks a day where, I think everybody across the sector, it's often referred to as the third sector. World humanitarianism is referred to as the third sector. And so it's actually a day for everybody to be able to, literally step back, reassess what it is that people do, reassess the work that's being done around the world, this commitment that groups of people seem to have to want to change the world, to want to do better, to want to be able to create better living environments, foster better relationships. It comes with a lot of dedication. It comes with a lot of hard work. And there are phenomenal bodies and institutions and organizations and volunteers across the world that really, really work hard and go out of their way every single day to make this world a better place, to transform communities, change lives. So this day, actually, the UN decided that there should be a day marked to commemorate this. Not just commemorate the people behind the scenes, but I think also, to take a step back and commemorate the reason as to why humanitarianism, why do people want to do it, renew your intention towards pledging your support towards helping and assisting communities.
Well, Shahnaaz, obviously it takes that special type of person to become a humanitarian. And I know as Muslims, we are encouraged to be humanitarians each and every day of our lives. The teachings of the Quran are clear. The teachings of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam are very, very clear. And we are guided by those principles first as Muslims. But just coming to Penny Appeal South Africa, let's take a step back. Let's look at, your involvement. Let's look at just Penny Appeal South Africa in terms of World Humanitarian Day and, how you are inspired by this day, which takes place every year?
I think when we look at, often we think about organizations, right? There's so many organizations doing different type of work. There's so many individuals. Often it becomes very noisy. People tend to lose sight. We get busy trying to fundraise. We get busy trying to market. We get busy with projects. The inspiration behind it undoubtedly is twofold. I think firstly, it's the divine inspiration. For me, if I speak about it in terms of how I understand the context, it's that divine inspiration where we know that, first of all, our faith, like most other faiths, there's a strong belief that our Creator, commands us to, example, love for your brother or sister what you love for yourself, to do good unto others. One of the pillars of our faith is charitable deeds, right? It's paying your zakat. So that undoubtedly becomes the first inspiration, and we know all too well that the reward is tenfold in terms of being able to give off your charity, being able to help others, even if it's not monetary value. Being good to other people, be assisting people wherever possible. These are the teachings of a good nation, of good people, of those that strive to do good, and be good in this world and inshallah in the hereafter. The second point I'd want to touch on in terms of inspiration, it obviously comes from, the people that we serve on the ground. A lot of the time, like I mentioned, it's very noisy in our sector. There's a lot going on. We've got to make sure that things continue. We've got to make sure that there's a lot going on so people are able to be assisted. What we do is when we go into the field and interact, and when we see the success stories, and when we see how people's lives have been changed, how people's lives have been transformed, undoubtedly that becomes a source of great inspiration. I think a lot of people, a lot of individuals, draw a lot of inspiration from that. And for me, that's my inspiration, being able to know that the people we serve, their lives are being changed for the better, their lives are being transformed, regardless of where they may be in the world, regardless of what their situations may be. I think it's really integral to draw inspiration from that, because that is the crux of what we do, to be able to serve humanity.
Shahnaaz, for you personally, at what point in time did you realize you wanted to be a humanitarian?
Uncle Inait, I don't think I ever came to that actual realization consciously. It was something that actually just filtered into my life. I do know when I had completed my matric, I had wanted to do social work, right? I was always very drawn towards that. And the funny thing is, I was accepted for social work, but I went on to rather do media and communications. Full 360, and I find myself in a career path, alhamdulillah, that is so blessed to be able to walk a similar path and be able to serve people. I do feel that at the crux of all of that, my intent to want to help people, my intent to have this need, I wouldn't say, yes, to care for people to an extent, but I think also to try and level off those inequalities. Growing up, in South Africa, and even now more than ever, we see that there are so many people where the inequalities are so stark. We see so much of it, so much of poverty. I was definitely drawn to the idea of being able to assist people to get to a level, where they were self-sufficient, to get to a level where, example, children in my school, or children or students at university, were able to be self-sufficient, where people didn't have to really struggle for those basic needs that they had every day, or for their basic rights, food, shelter, etc. So those are definitely my inspirations. What drew me to the sector also is being able to actively, change things, be able to actively go on to create projects, to create meaningful change, and not really do it as a by the way thing, but actually spearhead it and drive it forcefully, again, for the greater good.
Just, I know you mentioned that it's a very noisy space to be in because there's just so much happening. But
Mhm.
what keeps you going as a humanitarian?
Sorry, repeat the question.
I said, what keeps you going as a
What keeps me
humanitarian?
going? Um, I think one of the, it, yes, being a noisy sector, it's also easy to sometimes um, lose sight sometimes, or become very demotivated. We see so much of need, especially now in the world. Everywhere you look, there's something happening. There are people in need. There's right here in our own country, and sometimes it can become very overwhelming, and you can feel very helpless that you're not reaching enough people, and you can't see the breakthroughs happening. But I think the idea that you see the small changes, and I don't just say it because it's penny appeal. It's not just about small change, big difference, but you start seeing the smaller. You celebrate the small wins. The little things that happen, the small steps that make things better, that help people. Whether it's, example, awarding a bursary, whether it's a child who's received their school shoes, whether it's a mom who's received a new home, whether it's Syrian refugees that have been provided with meals for at least the next 6 to 8 months. It's those things that keep you going. It's those things that renew that intention and that want, and that burning desire to want to help those most in need. So definitely, I think taking into account that it's all of the smaller things that add to the bigger picture, and that we can't do everything at once, and sometimes not everything is a magnanimous action of being able to help those in need. It's a culmination or coming together of all those smaller acts that actually lead up to something that really changes lives.
Yes, and Shiran's also being exposed to people who are in need in more ways than one. And, whether we're talking of people being displaced through wars, through occupations, or just pure hunger, poverty. Uh, at the end of the day, we're all human, and emotions run high. And I'm sure you've had many of those moments in your life as well. Uh, what has been your biggest heart wrenching moment as a humanitarian?
Um, there've been a few. There have been a few, specifically when I visited Syrian refugee camps. There have been a few that have really tugged at my heartstrings. But there's one that, as I'm speaking to you, I'm actually still getting goosebumps because we're away currently on project visits. We're right here in South Africa, but visiting, project sites and attending to some of the work that we do, and planning ahead. And as recent as 2 days ago, I visited a home, in a city in South Africa, and there was a family, that lived in a sort of a camp, but in an informal settlement type of area, a very very small place of dwelling where there were 5 children, and none of these children were in school. All of these children were now being sent to madrasas, to become hufaz, and learn the Quran. So alhamdulillah for that. And so we were speaking to them, and I was speaking to one of the little girls outside. She reminded me a lot of my niece, and she's a tiny little girl, about 3 years old. And so I spoke to her, and we were playing a bit. And so I said to her, "Have you eaten today? What did you eat today?" And she says to me, "No, I had bread. There was bread." And I said, "Oh, okay, lovely." I said, "Bread and." And again, that's when that autopilot mode. It's us continuing a conversation as we would with anybody else, not realizing the response that came back was, "No, there's just bread. There was just bread." And for that moment in time, I literally froze because it tugged at my heartstrings, because here was a family who wasn't, you know, they didn't display any of those signs of desperation in terms of poverty or anything like that, but it was very, very clear and evident from where they lived that there was not much that they had. Everybody lived in the small enclosure, which is probably the size of your studio, Uncle Inayat, maybe add on a little bit more, but that was about it, to include some kind of sanitation. And my heart literally just broke. I actually felt myself breaking down. It came out of nowhere. You hear all types of things, but for a little girl, to happily say to you, "No, it was just bread," um, that really broke me, as recent as 2 days ago. And again, there's that reminder that comes from the Almighty, that firstly, how fortunate are some of us, alhamdulillah, to be able to be blessed with so much. And alhamdulillah, how fortunate are all of us to be able to be in a position to try and help those, count every blessing. And so yes, there were tears. I was really, I think, for the next hour or so, I was absolutely out of it, because I thought to myself, in this day and age, one slice of bread, again, like 5 children plus a single mother, and yet a smile on the face, and yet so content with living literally amongst not good living conditions, really confined space, don't have much except the clothes that they have, which are alternated, waiting and relying on people to assist them. It's not the ideal, and it tells a very sad story. And on that day, I think that little girl, honestly, she really brought me to tears. Um, but alhamdulillah, for us being able to have the means to be able to, inshallah, do something about it. And we make dua for those that we can't reach. That also bothers me sometimes, that there are those that we reach, great. There's so many more that we haven't reached, and it really sometimes doesn't sit well with me. But Allah Ta'ala is, I think, in charge of all things, and He, brings to us whatever it is, wherever we are needed, and we do as much as we can, for His pleasure alone, inshallah.
Well, all of it is for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is these heart wrenching moments, that, inspires you to even reach greater heights as well. And I must say, Jazakallah to you for coming on this morning and talking to us, and at an occasion that is taking place tomorrow, World Humanitarian Day. And we wish you well. Allah accept your efforts. And also all those associated with Penny Appeal South Africa, we wish you well. And I think over the years, it's been an absolute pleasure for us at Salam Media, linking up and talking from time to time as well. You are on the ground, and we tell the story. So, alhamdulillah, we are appreciative of that partnership, that, for want of a better term, that we have obviously over a period of time, which has actually grown. So, inshallah, Allah make it easy. Once again, have yourself a wonderful Jummah as well, Shahnaaz. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Juma Mubarak, shukran for the opportunity. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Shahnaaz Paruk, CEO of Penny Appeal South Africa, with us.